Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday gathering. In the quest of seeking the self, seeking the truth, seeking what is real, seeking that which doesn't die, is not subject to change, is not subject to the passing time, is not subject to the past, the present, the future. Seeking that which is beyond this play of good and evil, acceptable and non-acceptable. The opposites that life is lived as, me and the other. In this quest, as it starts with turning inward, the daily living, the daily exchange, the interhuman or the interpersonal exchange of life that it is, can get overlooked in our quest of finding that which is the source of the daily life, which is the source of what I am as this person, or this construct that I suddenly have realized myself to be. And sometimes in this seeking process, it becomes useful to just sit back as this person, which is this product of genes and up-to-date conditioning, and connect it to the the impersonal awareness that I am, which is shining through or living as this product of genes and up-to-date conditioning, which is unique, which is complex, which is ever evolving, always in movement. And sometimes it is beneficial, for the lack of a better word. Not that if what I'm going to say, if it doesn't happen, it'll be harmful. um, but sometimes it just makes sense in the process to just sit back as this person and look at myself as what is the programming, what are my priorities, what are my strengths, what are my shortcomings, where in life there is still avoidance or resistance or attachment. What area of my life am I still kind of trying to ignore in the name of going inward? It might be useful to just sit back and really be openly, truly, radically be honest with ourselves that, you know what? I'm not going to hide from myself anymore. I'm not going to take the spiritual seeking as an excuse for everything that is unfolding in this life that I may want to put off and not look at right now. Because sometimes in that very programming deck of what I am designed as, what my tendencies are, what my patterns are, what I like and dislike, not just only from the biological angle, but like and dislike in the sense, what am I craving and what am I resisting? And that is where sometimes when we find the very key to opening up to that which is impersonal, which is what the seeking is about, really. So sometimes in the process, it is said that all of this is unreal, which is um, accurate at some point from an angle. And yet, in this illusion of what is going on, lie the very gems of self-awareness, of opportunities of self-acceptance, opportunities to surrender finally. Sometimes it is not just about going beyond the content of experiencing or content of what I am as a person to ground into that which is untouched, that within which the very play of duality is going on, to recognize or remember or stabilize in the non-duality that is within which the duality emerges and falls away. Sometimes it is within the very duality, within the very conflict, within the very thing I am afraid to look at is where the non-duality of that very conflict may emerge, may become evident. And this is an arena where um, practices like maybe even therapy with a psychologist or psychotherapy, somatic work, body work, emotional, um, inner child practices, dynamic dance meditations, and um, self-love practices, nervous system regulation, movement that is so out there. So we can say popular, but is coming out to be what's needed for systems that are literally either in fight or flight or freeze response, and there is no chance to come back in the body to really embody the mess or the bliss that we are. Both are inaccessible. And it's only through the mess that the bliss can be reached, or the bliss is realized to be. Mess is not the opposite of bliss. Mess is within the bliss. So any rejection or resistance of the mess is already veiling the bliss that we inherently are. Bliss, I'm just using that word bliss, but you can call that consciousness. What I am, the amness, is not the absence of what we may label as mess in this account. It is full acceptance or falling away of the non-acceptance or resistance of that mess. That means when the mess is not labeled or experienced as mess, it's not mess anymore. It's just what is. It is labeled as mess because I don't like it. Because there is already resistance towards it. There is already a rejection to those patterns or those arisings, may it be physical or emotional, psychological, may it be in a relationship with other, with money, with fame, with God, with myself. It doesn't mean that all those relationships will be hunky-dory and all wonderful and wholesome and beautiful according to my own definitions of what that should look like. They may remain exactly the same as they are. They may evolve. And yet, they're not messy anymore. There is no sense of not there yet in any of those arisings. It is exactly as it is. And there is an absence of judgment towards what is, and there's an absence of judgment of myself towards what is, in the sense that if a relationship is not wholesome, let's say, there is no blame towards the other if seemingly the other is bringing or contributing to the painful unwholesomeness of that relationship, and there's no self-blame or shame if I am the agent of that painful equation. And from that attitude, from that absence of blame and shame, that equation is bound to shift. Maybe not as, oh wow, now we are best friends, but maybe any relationship falling away. But it won't be from a place of suffering or hatred. It's just from a place where there is no need to break it up and there is no need to make it good. And there is an absence of non-acceptance to how it is. So it might actually be juicy in a way as a spiritual seeker to kind of take a look at all of our stuff that we are so prone to just shoving under the rug. And it might be scary to just pull the rug away and skeletons in the closet may just pop out all at once. And that might be too scary. So maybe we start small. We start small in a way, just a little bit, a little finger of the skeleton, and we look at that, and awareness is enough. There's no need to fix any of that stuff. It's just the willingness to look at all of it and to not ignore that we are messy beings. We are intricate and complex and good and bad at the same time. It is impossible to be a perfect person. We are not perfect, and that's okay. And we may find ourselves striving toward becoming perfect, and that's okay too. And accepting the fact that perfection, according to what I think perfection is just suffering. There is no such thing as a perfect person. It already is perfect as it is. It doesn't need my personal interference or intervention to become better than what it is. Because then that is saying that my will is greater than God's will. That is saying that the painted object knows how the painting should be and is trying to instruct the painter that you did the job wrong. You shouldn't have painted the painting like this. You should put a stroke like that over there and not like this. And that comes not only from arrogance, but ignorance of the fact that there is no doer of life. There is nobody, me or the other, that is doing life. Life is exactly unfolding outside of our control as it is. It is appearing as pleasure in one moment, pain in another moment. It is appearing as the dysfunctional relationship. It is appearing as the resolution to that dysfunction through me or through the other or through an unpredictable event in life. And it is all playing itself out with such a beautiful design that we as instruments get to feel like that we are the agents of them, that I am doing to make that happen, or the other is doing that to make that happen. And we get to play the game like that. That is such a blessing. And that is when believed in as the absolute truth that I'm the doer and other is the doer is the very cause of suffering itself also. So it is two sides of the same coin. The game won't be worth playing without the sense of doership. And the belief in the sense of doership is the very cause of the suffering as well. That doesn't mean that the sense of doership needs to fall away. It is just a matter of being able to see that, oh, I feel like I'm the doer in the moment. And I do have to face the consequence of whatever action happens to happen from me. And yet I'm not the doer. Because whatever words or action ended up happening through me in certain moment was a result of a sensory input, maybe someone else saying something to me, or me hearing something, or a thought coming in the mind. And then that mingling up and mixing up with my genes and up-to-date conditioning in that very moment. And then the output of that was what happened. And if that's how it's going on for me, it only makes sense that that's how it's going on for the other. So the shame and blame game just doesn't make sense anymore. There is no reason to not accept what is exactly as it is, because what is the point of not accepting it? Because it couldn't be any other way. It was exactly as it was. It is exactly as it is. And then maybe coming a step back, it is exactly as it is, including my non-acceptance of it. Because even my suffering or my non-acceptance or judgment or shame or blame is exactly a result of my genes and up-to-date conditioning in this moment. And whatever might be thought of, maybe I'm ruminating on a past event that happened, and I'm um, blaming the other for what happened, let's say 5 years ago. But that memory is what the input is in this moment. And what my genes and up-to-date conditioning are in this moment are mixing up and creating that sense of blame or hatred. That is exactly how it is happening as a result of life unfolding exactly the way that it does. I am not the doer of shame, and I'm not the doer of blame either. So the non-acceptance of non-acceptance really has a chance to fall away. And us putting words to these concepts or these mechanisms sound complicated. Like sometimes I had to listen to these explanations 50 times, 100 times, and really like trying to understand, like, what does it even mean? Non-acceptance of non-acceptance. And yet when it clicks, if it is destined to click in the moment that it does, it it's just obvious. It's like, of course, yes. How else would it be? And that itself is a happening and not my doing. Nobody's doing really. So with that, even conceptual understanding, it becomes interesting, at least, um, if not enticing, to just come back, look at myself as like Gurleen, sitting as Gurleen and just looking at, oh, look at that. I am resisting something there, and then I'm craving something here, and I'm imposing my expectations on that relationship. And I have I can just be available to look at my own beliefs that I find myself living by day in and day out, which are not in alignment to the, let's say, conceptual understanding at that point that I resonate as the accurate understanding. And yet I see myself relating to people or things or many aspects of my life where that understanding is still missing. It's still coming from a place of belief and doership and attachment to outcome. And there's nothing wrong. It's just how I, as a system, am designed in this moment. And it's just a result of that design. And if there can be awareness of that output, and if you're able to just be aware that, oh, this output is from misunderstanding, not that we need to do anything about it, but just that awareness without any judgment of ourselves is the very key to freedom from it. And freedom, maybe not in the sense of that those patterns will fall away, but freedom from suffering because of those patterns. Freedom from sense of belief in the sense of doership of those patterns, because it can then be clearly recognized and confirmed that these patterns are just here. I have no choice in the moment but just to react in the way that I do. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, why did I talk like that? Or why did I think like that? Why did I shut my mouth? I should have said something, or whatever the case may be. And then it becomes clear that actually it's just what this product that is designed to do something does. And then maybe next time, with that awareness, the same reaction may arise to happen. And maybe if that's destiny, there can be awareness before it is acted upon. And with that awareness, maybe the action is weaker, or action is in the moment, real time, seen as a happening and not a doing, not my doing. It can very much be clear that, oh, look at that. I'm arguing, trying to make a point, as if being right is what I'm looking for and not peace of mind. And as that is happening, there is an awareness of that. And in that moment, it is experientially clear now. So it's not conceptual understanding anymore. It is experiential understanding where it is confirmed that, oh, look at that, speaking happens. And it's coming from a program that is automatically run given the input. And that is when we can say that life itself is sadhana, is a spiritual practice. We don't need to take out 1 hour, sit in meditation or chant mantras or do whatever spiritual practice that we are inclined to do. And we say, oh, that's our spiritual practice. So I practice 1 hour a day. It doesn't seem relevant anymore because even in dreams, we can find ourselves as awareness, becoming more and more aware of all the patterns and all the programming and system that is coded and designed with its deep-rooted patterns and emotions. So self-realization is, in all its glory, is not just the realization of that impersonal consciousness, but it is also full spectrum of realizing this whole shenanigan that we discard as unreal or an illusion as we start seeking. And then it's not a game of being a good person or being a rebel or being a kind person. It's not about cultivating anything different than what we find, although that work may happen as a consequence of awareness landing on certain unhealthy patterns that create pain. And there may be a way to mitigate that pain or reduce that pain a little bit. So if I have a short fuse and I get angry a lot, then maybe awareness on that pattern can keep me aware that, oh, look at that. When I'm angry, it's not just the other that has to go through my wrath, but my body also doesn't. It's tight and it's painful, and maybe um, let's say I'm getting a high blood pressure because of that. So it might be a good idea to look at it and to maybe work on anger management and whatnot to stabilize it a little bit if possible. But it's not coming from a place of, oh, um, I'm not spiritual if I get angry. Anger needs to fall away for me to be enlightened. Enlightenment is just end of non-acceptance of what is exactly as it is, however functional, however dysfunctional it may be. Because the very idea of functional and dysfunctional is based in non-acceptance. And as said before, that doesn't mean that we just keep entertaining the dysfunctional, because events happen and deeds are done. And they can still flow, maybe even more efficiently, even more effectively, for change to happen towards the more wholesome equation. Or it may not. But the craving for change or the resistance towards change, if it's not pleasurable, that craving and resistance can be absent. And if craving and resistance is present, there can be an absence of resistance to that. Is it possible to just sit or just be without an agenda, without trying to find anything, without trying to drop anything, without the trying, really? Is it possible to just be here, regardless of how good or bad that may feel, however peaceful or intolerable, full of suffering it may feel? Is it possible to just be with it, be with what is exactly as it is showing up, however raw and in the face that experience may be? And that doesn't mean that being with it means that now we have to be very graceful and very strong and detached from that experience, including our reaction to that suffering, including our vulnerability, our awkwardness, our pain, our fear, including what arises in here towards that. Is it possible to just let it all be? And not as an action, not as an effort or even an intention, but just it is here and that's it. Letting it play out without playing any part in it, without playing a healing part or without playing a self-sabotaging part. Just letting it play out. And that also goes for the pleasure, because when suffering is here, of course, it feels like that now I need to practice my muscle that has been cultivated over the time of spiritual awareness or impersonal awareness or acceptance. But when pleasure comes down the road, whether it's a party with friends or traveling to our dream destination, a loving relationship, validation from a loved one, as and if that pleasure is being delivered, is it possible to just let it be without trying to manipulate it to be longer, or without trying to fully like, oh, let me have it all, let me taste it all, and just being grounded and experiencing the pleasure from here? The resistance to suffering or pain can be very visible and looks like a problem to address. But the craving towards pleasure goes unnoticed because it's so pleasurable. I'm so in the moment that, what do you mean craving to pleasure? I was just enjoying the piece of cake. I was just enjoying that lovely conversation. And yet, there might be a possibility to just be there within ourselves and being available to look at that drive to, oh, let's hang out for half an hour more. Sure, my child is waiting at home, but I'm having so much fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. With just the availability to look at all of ourselves that clings to pleasure and runs away from pain. And that clinging and running away is the awareness of that mechanism is the very um, beginning or even the end of conceptual or intellectual understanding, going deeper and deeper into experiential understanding. That is when the spiritual concepts that resonate so well with our system for 1 hour a week or 5 hours a week or whatnot, bec- really penetrate our daily living and become our GPS, our um, inner guidance in everything that I, as Gurleen, live from, live for, live with, and anything else that I'm missing right now. But these concepts become the very living agent from where the belief and sense of personal doership and attachment to outcome can always be caught. Oh, look at that. And initially, it may seem like a lot of work because if the doer is listening to these concepts and descriptions right now, and if they are making sense, the doer will make sure and make it a project and mission to just wake up and get on mission until it goes to sleep. And it'll be a lot of work. And it is possible to just not fight with that as well. If it is happening, that's just what is. Is it possible to fully meet what is without trying to fight it or change it or maneuver it or deal with it or even accept it in that sense? It's okay. It's all okay. Even when it's not okay. Even when it feels like it's definitely not okay. That feeling in itself is also okay. It's okay to be not okay. And it's okay to be okay. Sounds like a word play, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Let's open up the space for any questions, conversations, comments. If you want to share something, any story or arising, I'd love to hear from you. You can raise your electronic hand and I will unmute you. Shiv.
Hi, Colleen. You can hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you, Shiv?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Mm, uh, I wanted to ask you about, um, you know, there's sometimes it seems like there's a call to action, and it's not so much egoic. There's a sense of adventure to it, and it's like feels like an outpouring. It's more stable, and it's very, like in that poem Sea Fever. I don't know if you have come across it. Uh, there are these lines which says, "I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky." And I forget the rest of the lines. There's this one line where he says, "For the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call, which may not be denied." So there's a different flavor to this kind of call, and I sometimes it seems like I'm being prodded to act, and in a general sense, there's been more of a, like with you also and most of the people I've been interacting with, there's a general sense of how spirituality can be a very deep engagement with life, a kind of a meeting between the deeper self and life circumstances for them to a dance between them. And there's a sense of excitement that comes with it, and also that give and take, that something about it. I feel something, and the the magnitude of that call in a way, and also something holy being interspersed, that quality of holiness also with it. It seems like a call to action and not, but you talk about how just to be grounded is more important. But I feel a sense of excitement also at times. And it seems like it's not just a regular egoic kind of thing. I wanted to ask you about that.
So if there's a call to action, take the action. If the action is not being taken, then there is something stopping the action. And if the action is supposed to happen, then take the action. Either the call will get so strong that it cannot be ignored, or one or the other thing may happen. The action has to take place. So, what's stopping you from taking that action?
Because this is all stuff that I've heard from my guru about how people start off with pure intentions and then gradually they drift away from the divine element of it. It gets polluted by personal ambition, about getting a following, about winning fame in the world. And then it becomes all egoic. It's all about glorifying yourself. And the holy element to it is lost. And that stuff keeps coming back. And I just want to make sure that the holy element has got my back and it's pushing me, and somewhere it's not it doesn't get all. And there's fear also, because it's somewhat very uncharted territory, and I don't want to like get into it and then I'm just like left on my own. And uh, I want to use the word God. God doesn't have my back because I need God's backing. And I don't want to lose that in trying to grasp at things which are very pleasurable but also have their pain. But ultimately, it's not about pleasure or pain, it's about losing the real juice of life, which is that holy element.
The
I
holy
don't know if I'm
element
making.
doesn't feel like holy all the time. Even the non-holy element comes from the holy element. So if I'm trying to match God's backing as an experience that feels like God's backing me, that may not be a constant in life, no matter whether whatever action you're talking about is taken or not, regardless of that. So I may not always feel like God's have had my back in the sense that I'm experiencing it, let's say now. But is it really possible? Because I am in God and God is living as me. All there is God. There is no such thing as me and my back and a God. So there is no such thing as holy or unholy. There is no such thing as uh, having a divine element and then losing the divine element. It is just what is. And not using these concepts as an excuse to just glorifying the ego, as you mentioned. Um, but it's clear in a moment. In some moment, it's just clear where this movement is happening from. And sometimes we don't even move ourselves, but we see ourselves moving, being moved. And that doesn't mean that we wait for that to happen. But if an action is supposed to happen, there's no such, like a rule
Threshold.
book of how it should be. This is how it must look like if it is coming from God or coming from ego, because ego itself is within God. So ego may feel like it is doing it, but it is eventually God's will that is going on, including the ego's feeling that it is doing it. It deserves the credit or it deserves the blame for whatever the consequence may be. So life is unfolding exactly as it is unfolding. And in this moment, it is unfolding as this strong call for action and this inquiry into whether that call for action is coming from God or coming from ego. So that is exactly what life is unfolding as in this moment in there. And whether that call for action is taken action upon, or whether that call of action is ignored until a certain point, or whether that you wake up tomorrow and that call for action is absent, like you don't even remember what you were so passionate about today. So any of those things can happen. And just being open to let's see what happens. There may come a moment where you would be like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna try like dipping a toe in. Maybe I don't take a dive in it. Maybe I dip a toe. Or maybe none of that happens. And it'll all be the divine element. It's impossible for anything to be without God, to be outside of God, the good and the bad, the egoistic and the selfless, we can say. They're both God.
Just a no rule book kind of life is. It's, I don't know. I'm beginning to like it also. But yeah.
Beginning, yes, it is very adventurous and exciting, and yet it is super scary because, like they say, with great power comes great responsibility. So the no rule book life, which is exactly the accurate, like relatively more accurate description of what life is unfolding as, there is no doer. So who would the rule be for? But there do need to be rule books and constitutions and shoulds and shouldn'ts for a society to go on. That's and for the instruments who do believe themselves to be the doer. So the no rule book doesn't mean that I just go about doing anything without really caring about the consequence, because yes, whatever actions may happen through me will have consequence in this world. And I'll be liable to them. Whether it's a good consequence, I'll be gifted with the credit. If it's a bad consequence, I'll be punished with the punishment, whatever it may be. And So the no rule book is not ignorant of that information. But the point is that if I am moving towards, let's say, taking an action, craving for the good consequence or the credit for the good consequence, then obviously there has to be a resistance or fear towards the bad consequence. So we basically
Hmm.
come back to the Bhagavad Gita famous one line, which the whole world might have heard about, is that karam kar phal ki ichha mat kar. What that means is that just take the action, whatever you're designed to do, just do without an attachment to outcome, because the outcome is not in your control anyway. And the action right now that we're talking about, so there's a call to action. To this call to action, the actual action is an outcome which is not in your control anyway. So whether you end up taking an action or not will be an outcome of this call, which is not in your control. So the no rule book comes with that understanding that it is not in my control whether I end up glorifying the ego or getting sunk into the fame and the name game of it, or whether it puts me further in the path of surrender or appreciating God and being able to see God in everything, whether that might be a good consequence or bad consequence. Good consequence can also be God's glory. Bad consequence is also God's glory. But me being able to see it and acknowledge in that way will be an outcome which is not in my control, will be God's will. So if I'm so scared of becoming more egoistic, even if I become that, will be God's will. It is impossible for that to happen outside of God's will.
I don't know how
So
to take your help. There is no help anywhere in this. It seems
yeah,
like this. There isn't.
it's hopeless. It is hopeless. And from a place of suffering, it is the worst news ever. And from the place of peace of mind, that's exactly the freedom that the seeking started for. So I would
Thank
just
you.
say, not that I'm giving an advice, but just wait and watch and let me know what happens.
Thank you. Thank you. Like, can I ask one more thing? Like when you started offering satsang, did you go through something similar like this? Like, or even when you say gradually you felt like offering these one-on-one sessions, that was a call to action, I guess, or was it just surrendered and you just watched it happen, or did you
It
go
can
through
be,
this?
that's a good question, and it can be all sorts of things.
Hmm.
What is absent is that horizontal thinking of should I have done that? Should I not have done that? What if this happens? What if, as a practical planning, yes, we need to plan the risks and recognize the risks and do some risk management. But that horizontal thinking of should I do
The
it? Should I not do
consequences.
it? Yeah, or what if this happens? What if that happens? As if it is going to affect me as what I am, that my happiness, my completeness is based on, let's say, offering the one-on-ones. If I was so attached to it, if I was coming from a place of attachment and nobody called in for one-on-one, I would be devastated. And then I maybe go into a spiral of shame. It's like, oh, nobody wants to talk to me, and it can go anywhere. So that element is absent. It doesn't matter whether I offer it or not. It doesn't matter whether they even happen or not. That is just life unfolding as it does. And even that shame spiral is just life unfolding as it does. But from the context of how actions take place, they're no different than what they used to be before. Sometimes there's a thought about it and it was like, oh yeah, let me just say it. And sometimes like months and months go by, I was like, I always forget to talk about it in satsang. And then it's like, well, I've been wanting to do it, but I haven't been able to do it. And that's also what is. So life is very regular, exactly as it used to be. The only element absent would be that element of suffering or the element of judgment of what an outcome means for me. because the outcome is impersonal, and what I am is not added to or subtracted from because of an outcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Shiv. I hope that was helpful. Renee.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Um, I'm just wondering, Gerlene, I'm I'm finding that I'm not able to connect with awareness, and I struggle to identify it even. And when I search for it, it feels really tiring, like like a strain, like like fatigue comes over me. And but then most of the time I just forget about it altogether. I mean, um, maybe it's just not for me, but um, I don't know. Um, it seems like however many pointers I hear and videos I watch, I just can't seem to to locate it.
Thank you for sharing that, Renee. How is your experience when you totally forget about it altogether? You say there are times when that happens, and how is that for you as an experience?
Just like getting on with life. Um, which isn't isn't great. Um, but once I remember that I've been forgetting, then I think, oh, there's no hope for me. I've forgotten again for hours. I'm not a very good seeker. Because um, even when I'm thinking about these things, I'm forgetting to look within, and then when I do look within, I get distracted so easily. Just my attention just wanders off.
I was listening to a satsang from my teacher, Roger, and it was like a 2.5 hour talk. And those were the times when I would listen to satsangs like sleeping and awake and in the car and while cooking and yeah, like ev all the time as much as I could. And there was this one satsang um, where he talks for like 2 hour, 15 minutes in the end while he's closing rather than saying, oh, see you next, whatever. Like rather than his regular like closing the talk, he just said, you have no homework. And I remember just falling into pieces. It was almost like a catharsis that happened where I was crying and laughing at the same time. Because as if, yeah, as seeking starts, just based on how we have been conditioned in life as children, like the school system, the education system, and even as kids with our parents, the reward and punishment is the formula that is globally used to bring up the children that are born and then toddlers and whatnot. That's how our parents were trained and their parents were trained, and their parents were trained, and that's how we were trained. So this sense of reward and punishment, that if I do this, I deserve the reward, and if I don't do this or do something not as good as that, then I deserve the punishment. And that's just inbuilt in our system, not just from our childhood, but in our genes, in our DNA of generations and generations, going back all the way that we can fathom, really. So it is like hard coded in our systems biologically to feel like we need to succeed in life, and whatever that may mean, in the sense of relationships or money or education or job or even spiritual seeking. So we are ingrained with this idea, not because of our fault or not because of our parents' fault. Really, it's just how it is, how the game is designed, how life is designed, that we are bound to feel like we need to excel in whatever is going on. And then when spiritual seeking starts, the interest turns towards these concepts and satsangs and meditations and practices, whatever resonates with our system so truly that nothing before that really felt that true. Nothing before that felt safe enough for us to let our guard down on. And now as the spiritual realm unfolds and opens up in our life with these concepts and questions that just make sense, that yeah, I've been growing up with these questions, and I find this person talking about the same thing, and it resonates so deeply that for the first time in my life, I feel like that I can finally relax and not fight with who I am and the questions that I've been living with, feeling like there's no one else on this planet or that I know is dealing with those kind of questions, or, those kind of experiences, really. And then now, when the spiritual seeking starts, and by God's grace, by life's grace, we get access to this community, even with the help of different teachers or speakers and their listeners, and we get to go on retreats and meet different people on the same path, and then somehow still coming from their unique experiences and understandings and blind spots. It feels like we have found what's really meaningful. However, that deep-rooted, ingrained program of wanting to excel, as in that I am successful in seeking only when I find enlightenment. That is the same mechanism that was working before the seeking started, which was that only if I make $1 million is when I'll be successful. Only when I am whatever, it can take any form in life. Only when I weigh, say, 100 pounds or 110 pounds is when I'll really be healthy or really be beautiful. Only when I have 15 friends and they call me and we keep in touch every week is when I'll finally have made it in socially speaking. Only if I've traveled 15 countries is when I will be satisfied or when I'll be interesting enough. So this narrative, this deep-rooted, almost physical narrative, is where we find ourselves diving into the spiritual seeking as well from. And what the concepts, the spiritual concepts, the non-duality concepts, the wisdom teachings are really pointing at is the misunderstanding of this very mechanism. It is okay to forget about God because it is God forgetting about God. And that is what clicked when I heard Roger say, you don't have any homework. Sorry, but it was just so appropriate in the moment that yes, I would sit in satsang, I would listen to satsangs all day, every day, thinking that, oh, I'm going to reach somewhere once I understand all of this and once I finish off my suffering. I was this suffering ninja. That's the identity that this mechanism can take. And it may seem so noble and so innocent and even pure that there is no way that I can look at that as the culprit. But the very need to remember or locate or experience that which I think wisdom teachings are pointing to, which they label as God or awareness or consciousness, all of them at some point or another mention that effort, there's no effort that can lead to it. So once that lands, I can just relax. What if I would be a good seeker when I stop trying? There's no need to experience awareness. There is no need to locate what I already am. That is the very facade. That is the very paradox of wisdom teachings or non-duality or experiential recognition. It's only when I am relaxed, whether that's a good experience or a bad experience, only if I am with whatever it is, it's okay to forget. It's okay to not seek. What if forgetting to seek is the very falling away of seeking, which is exactly what the end point is supposed to look like? What if,
Even if they're still suffering?
yes, so when there is suffering, if it is possible to see, if it is possible to be with the suffering from a place of not resisting or not waiting for the suffering to end. And that doesn't mean that if, let's say, there is an opportunity to talk to someone about it, or just in this capacity, there is this opportunity to come together and talk about it, that doesn't have to come from a place of wanting the suffering to end. That can come from a place of this clear discernment that, yes, suffering is coming from a place of misunderstanding. Life is presenting me with an opportunity to look at this misunderstanding and to hopefully for awareness to land on where the misunderstanding is really coming from. But that sense of doership that wants to do it 24/7 or wants to not forget about it or wants to completely finish it off of its own accord, that's more suffering on top of the existing suffering.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Renee. And I would just repeat what Roger said. We have no homework. We have nothing to do at all. And again, not meaning that we don't make an effort to, if we feel like coming to satsang, we join. And if there is an inclination to ask a question, we ask a question. If there is an inclination to share what's going on and just be present with another seeker who's on the same path and just spend some time with them if that opportunity presents itself. It is appreciated and taken. And yet, if the effort is feeling tiring, that's a good thing. It may not sound good, but if the effort feels counterproductive, that may mean that the effort needs to fall away. And that may already be the beginning of intelligence developing in the system that is taking feedback that, oh, whenever I put my attention and try to do it, I just end up feeling worse than before. And that may be the new conditioning that system is getting now to understand that, oh, you know what? Effort doesn't work. So a different approach may be taken, or all approaches can just relax. And it may just in that moment, when I'm not looking for it, what I really am reveals itself to what I am. And sometimes it is also useful. Thank you, Renee, for opening up this tangent of conversation. And as I began, sometimes it is useful to talk about what the suffering is about, whatever pattern or whatever circumstance that may be triggering the suffering. So sometimes as a conversation, we start with explaining the trigger. And then if there is another presence available, and that is the very purpose of satsang, by the way, that we can just talk about, okay, this happened and I hate my mother for this, or however it comes. And then there is a possibility to look at, oh, look at that, that's blame. And it can land in the system, oh, look at that, I'm not suffering because my mother did that to me. I'm suffering because I am experiencing blame. And right in that moment, with the help of the satsang space or some other seeker's space, or maybe just looking in the mirror and talking to ourselves, even in that capacity, or journaling, it is possible to come to see that, oh, so that what my mother did was a trigger. But suffering is my attitude, which is the blame that I'm experiencing. And then the attention or can just come within. And it's not about the trigger anymore. The attention can come within, and that's it. Nothing more is needed. And as the blame is caught, that, oh, look at that. The suffering is not because of the circumstance, but so in this case, the suffering is not because I forget, but suffering is because there is a feeling of guilt or shame that I forgot. Because forgetting happens. Just like the guilt and shame that as the suffering as a result of the forgetting. And yet, if the attention can land, oh, look at that, me feeling bad about forgetting is the suffering. Me forgetting is no problem. It's okay to forget. There's no need to remember that which already is. Is it really possible to look that, oh, look at that, how am I judging myself for forgetting? And can I be okay with that? It's like, oh, I have a pattern of judging myself, and that's just how I'm designed by life. And that awareness in itself is enough. Life as we are experiencing it is such a master stroke. There is no way to make sense of it. We think we can make sense of it. We would like to believe that we can make sense of it. And we can try all we want to make sense of it. Yes, there can be descriptions here and there from one angle or another, but it is impossible to look at life as a whole from within life as the little instrument that I am. And that's where surrender happens, when I realize that I am nothing. And yet, what I am is the embodiment of all that is. I am life itself. And yet, as this separate doer, I'm nothing. I'm just this little teeny tiny bundle of 5 elements with the sense of belief in personal doership and attachment to outcome, sitting here and going through the roller coaster of pleasure and pain and peace and suffering, seeking seeking inwardly or outwardly, or not seeking. What a ride. And it is such a joy, such a privilege to be able to come together in this way. Thank you, everyone, for coming together as a listener or as a sharer. Your openness, your willingness, your availability is the very space that this satsang is, within which all of us find our up-to-date conditioning updating itself. So there is nothing that needs to happen after this talk. There's no need to take a note of any word that was shared, anything that was pointed at, any description that was explained. Nothing to do. And all the doing can emerge from that. The very paradox that cannot be expressed in words. And yet we tirelessly and happily, fortunately, come together to put words on it. Thank you so much for your presence today. I love you all. See you next Sunday.